thought otaku was a compliment? In the West, yes. In Japan, for decades, the same word often isolated people. Today we'll see why one word can live two very different lives. Hi everyone, welcome to Mythos Explained, and here we unpack the culture, myths, and curiosities behind anime, games, and comics. Today we're breaking down a term used by millions of fans, otaku, where it comes from, what it meant in Japan, and how the West reinvented it. Let's get started. Let's start at the beginning. You'll see otaku written a few ways. J, that's the honorific O plus the character J, which means home or residence. You'll also see it in hiragana, wataku, or katakana, wataku. It's always pronounced the same, otaku. How does a word tied to home become a label for diehard fans? Language drift and social irony. In the 1970s and early 80s, some speakers, especially in formal settings or among older people, used otaku as a very polite, distant way to say you or refer to someone's household, thinking of the listener's residence. Imagine in English, instead of saying, "Do you want tea?" you say, "Does your household prefer tea or coffee?" It sounds formal, cold, a little distant. Some young fans of sci-fi, comics, and anime picked up that phrasing as an inside joke, using an antiquated, detached form of address for one another like a group ritual. A big part of the term's spread came from writer and essayist Akio Nakamori, Jung Sun-ming Fu. In the early 80s, Nakamori published pieces analyzing and poking fun at this emerging fan underworld. His columns helped carry the word beyond small circles. From there, otaku stuck as a label for people deeply absorbed in a hobby, often to the detriment of other social aspects of life. Over time, otaku came to describe someone obsessed with a subject: collectors, fanzine writers, convention regulars, people who live their interest intensely and narrowly. The implied connotation was often social withdrawal or eccentric dedication. Now a harder chapter. In the late 1980s, a high-profile criminal case drew public attention to certain aspects of the hobby. Press coverage sensationalized the suspect's private collections of horror videos and manga and tied those obsessions to his crimes. The media used otaku as an emotional hook. That coverage sparked a moral panic, worried parents, TV warning segments, and a public climate where the label otaku came to mean marginality or danger. Important to be clear, sensational media pieces did not prove that fandom causes crime. The harm, however, was real. School clubs felt pressure, many people hid their collections, and the stigma that grew in those years lasted a long time. As we tell this part of the story, we avoid sensationalism. We won't show gruesome details or use names to stoke alarm. What matters is how the media reshaped a word into a socially loaded label. The key point: public narrative and reporting can reshape a term's meaning much faster than social reality changes. Meanwhile, overseas something different happened. In the 90s and 2000s, as anime exploded in the US and Europe, Western fans discovered otaku and found it exotic, specific, and, above all, cool. Otaku became a badge of belonging, deeply passionate, narrowly focused, devoted. This is a positive reclaiming. Shirts, channel names, blogs proudly proclaiming otaku. In the West, the term largely lost the stigmatizing weight it carried in Japan and became shorthand for intense fandom without danger attached. This divergence is a clear example of how words change across cultures. Same form, different meanings. In Japan, historical memory and social context mattered. In the West, the word appealed for its sound and specificity. Today, things are more complex and more nuanced. With the globalization of pop culture, neighborhoods like Akihabara thrive commercially. Anime tourism is huge, and the industry openly monetizes the hobby. At the same time, linguistically, otaku has become more specialized. Anime otaku train otaku, idol otaku. Among some younger Japanese people, in certain contexts, the word has lost part of its sting. But caution, many Japanese still hesitate to call themselves otaku publicly because the echo of the historical stigma remains. So here's the practical takeaway. If you're a Western fan using the word among other fans, it's usually fine. It signals passion and identity. If you're in Japan or speaking with Japanese people, it's safer to say anime fan or manga lover unless you know how that person uses the term. Not to be needlessly politically correct, but out of respect for context. Finally, there's an interesting cultural feedback loop. Some young Japanese today are readopting or reinterpreting otaku after seeing its positive use abroad. Global culture borrows, transforms, and sends back altered words. What one society rejected can return changed because meanings travel. So, should you use otaku? It depends on context. Among Western fans, it's almost always okay. In Japan, be cautious and prefer phrases like "I love anime" or "I'm an anime fan" if you don't know the other person's sensibility. The bigger lesson, when we borrow words from another culture, they don't always carry the same weight. Knowing a word's history helps you use it thoughtfully. This is the kind of small cultural literacy that changes how we communicate. It's not just vocabulary, it's respect. If you learned something, hit like and subscribe for more deep dives into anime, myths, and language. Tell me, have you ever said otaku in front of a Japanese person? What reaction did you get? Share your experience in the comments. I'm genuinely curious to read your stories. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.